without death, there cannot be life. I'm talking about end of life conversations, conversations about the end of life. Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
And then about a year after she had died, my sister called me and she said, Mom's really mad at you. And I said, okay. And she said, she can't connect to you. You know, she's really trying, but she's not getting through. You're too busy. You're too wrapped up in your work, and you need very badly to find a way to just listen. Just listen.
Welcome to this episode of End of Life Conversations. I'm Reverend Wakil David Matthews.
And I'm the Reverend Mother Ana Luisa Armendariz. In this podcast, we share people's experiences with death and dying, grief and loss, and the end of life.
We really enjoy all of our excellent and insightful guests. They generously tell their stories with compassion and wisdom. We also want to thank Wakil and Wendy's children and partners for that wonderful introductory song. Okay, let's get started.
Hello, hello. Today we welcome Fran Parker. Fran is a writer who loves Earth and the diversity of life on planet Earth. Her awe of humanity's potential and her communication with God, as well as journeys in dreams and meditations, led to her writing the book God's Gift to Gaia, Guidance for Awakening Humans.
She tells us the messages from Jesus led to a book sequel called Jesus Joins the Dialogue. Fran has a PhD in intercultural education, and Fran's my mother's cousin, so we've had many fascinating conversations over the years. In today's podcast, she'll be sharing stories of her communications with close deceased relatives, her mother and father, who died in 1997, and her daughter, Cathy, who died in 2020. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Yes,
so great to have you.
It's a joy to be here.
So we always begin with the first question of when you first became aware of death.
Definitely the major turning point for me in my life was my mother's death, 1997, September 11th. And she was only 75 years old, and we weren't prepared for her death. Just all of a sudden, she died in her sleep overnight. And she had been taking care of my father, who was the one who was destined not to last a lot longer. And I think she just wore out. But it was a shock to all of us. And our whole family drove down to North Carolina where she lived. And as we were gathering in the home and trying to figure out what to do and everything, she was sending messages like crazy. And my girls picked up on it right away. Both of my daughters immediately could hear her messages, could understand that's grandma talking to me. And I could not hear them, but there were all these things happening that kind of made us say, what is that? You know, like a rock that we pick up that's in her room and it's talking to us and kind of, you know, sending energy through our hands. Or we had my daughters were preparing the room it was a very small house. So they were preparing the room that she had lived in to sleep in that night. And so they pull out her favorite little radio and unplug it from the wall. And it started playing a song. Okay. This is an electric radio that's not possible to do. So, you know, it's like that. So we knew something was going on, but, you know, we were just kind of, oh, can you believe that? You know, and all these different things. Sunsets, unbelievable sunsets every night. So after we went back home, I get back into my office, and one of my doctoral students comes in and says, "How are you doing?" And she's a counselor on death and dying. Her name is Dr. Lonnie Leary. She's quite fabulous. And she sat me down, closed the door, and hugged me for a long, long, long time. I cried and cried in her arms. And then she said, "So what's happening?" And I said, "Well, there's a lot of stuff to tell you about, but I don't know what to make of it. You know, it's just like very confusing, and I'm so emotional about this whole thing." And she said, those are your mother's messages, Ginger. You've got to listen. You've got to journal. She said, journal.
Yeah.
Journal. So I started writing down. My sister was letting me know every other day, this happened now, this is mom. I know this is mom. And so I kept a journal of all these things that were happening. And then about a year after she had died, my sister called me and she said, Mom's really mad at you. And I said, okay. And she said, she can't connect to you. She's really trying, but she's not getting through. You're too busy. You're too wrapped up in your work, and you need very badly to find a way to just listen. Just listen. So we were on a plane to Alaska. I was going to another research site. There were no passengers. It was going way out west to Bethel, Alaska. And the plane was really loud. It was an old jet plane, and I was sitting right next to the jet engine, and it kind of put me into a meditative state, just the shaking of the plane and the sound of the jet engine. And all of a sudden, my tears just started pouring down. And Wayne says, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I said, "Mother's here."
Wow.
And then I got her first message as they finally came through telepathically. And her very first words were, "Ginger, it's more than you can possibly imagine."
Wow.
It's
Wow.
just incredible.
Yeah.
And there's lots of life beyond our planet and past our universe. It's just all kinds of stuff to explore. Beautiful. And then she said, there is nothing to fear. Remember that. There is absolutely nothing to fear. Mm-hmm. And then her third sentence was, we are all one. Mm-hmm. We are all one. And she was gone. Boy, did those messages go inside my psyche and just totally stunned me and stayed with me for the rest of my life. And so then after that, we had this relationship. It was a regular thing. She would talk to me almost every day. I said, "What are you doing, Mom?" And she said, I'm a guide. I decided to be a family guide for our family because I checked out too soon. And she said, on top of that, we raised you in the Methodist Church, but it's not really like that. All the stuff that you were trained on in the Methodist Church. And she said, it's different. And so I want you to know, all the things that are different from what most of the religions on earth teach you. And so she said, so I'm going to be your teacher. And sure enough, I'd walk into a bookstore and she would make sure I got into the metaphysical section. And she'd push out the books that I was supposed to read next. Wow. And she learned how to cross the two realms to be able to work physically with us as well as just the telepathic communications. She did that quite well. She was really good at it. And I should say she is really good at it.
Is it still going on today?
Yes. Oh, yes. And she's kept in very close touch with every single family member. Wayne is a scientist. This is my husband. And he was quite skeptical for the first 6 weeks or so. And when my father died, because my father had said, now that Jenny's gone, I can't stay. Within 7 weeks, he checked out.
Wow.
Too. Yeah. And so we were more prepared for his death. And by that time we'd had some pretty solid communications from my mom, but we had gotten used to that. We knew that they were there by, they would send a tiny little pinpoint of light into the room or outdoors, wherever we were. And my sister's daughter could actually see when she would look out the window at night and she'd say, "Hey, Grandma's here." And there are hundreds of other people with her,
Wow.
and there were just thousands of points of light outside. And so when my father died, we were in a room preparing for his funeral service in memoriam the next day. And in our room, the two of them came, my mother and father, in those pinpoints of light, and made it so obvious to Wayne because they were moving around and kind of dancing. And that he said, okay, Jenny and Frank, I get it. I know you're alive and well and having fun. And so that was the beginning of just lots of really rich, all kinds of communications from them. For my mother, a lot of we'd ask her about personal things, decisions to make with the family and stuff like that. And she was full of suggestions, and or she would explain why that wasn't such a good idea, from her perspective, her new perspective. And she didn't ever call it heaven. She just simply said, we just keep on going. We keep on living, And she said, but it's fun stuff. It's all fun. And there is absolutely nothing to be concerned about, be worried about. So that was
amazing.
Yeah, isn't it?
So amazing that you have this, it sounds like she almost wanted to apologize for your Methodist upbringing.
Right.
Even from the other side, they can come in and say, I'm sorry. I blew it.
Yeah.
So your story is very rich. And I'm curious, how has this transformed your personal life, your day to day?
Oh, wow. Well, it certainly made me a believer in telepathic communication and ability to connect to all kinds of life beyond, I connect telepathically to them on the other side, but I also connect to the natural world now too. So trees and plants and animals and insects, and I can, we can have a dialogue, a communication telepathically. So it taught me telepathic communication, and that's really the way most of the universe works. It's telepathic. So, languages on Earth are kind of primitive.
I 100% agree with you. I've been saying this to Wakil for a number of years. I'm so tired of prayers with words. Because it's like, it's just another construct. Right. It's just another construct to make us believe without those we cannot connect to anything else. Yeah. And so I'm just like, I've been really just growing into reluctance around language.
Yeah.
And there's so much new science now that's reminding us of what most indigenous people have known forever, that all of those, that there is nothing that can't communicate with us, that can't be a part of us. That is like your mom told you, we all, everything is the same. Everything is one, and it's all unity. Yeah. And so we can communicate with all those things, and we should. And by doing that, we recognize that we'd have no right to exploit those things, right? Yeah. So it's so important. Yeah. I really appreciate that.
We honor and love and respect every single being, every single entity, every single everything.
Yeah.
Another thing it has done for us is connect with the elementals. So we live on a farm, and we garden organically. And because we had that sense of everything is alive and rich with all kinds of messages to give to us. So I'll give you an example. I was in the front yard deciding where I was going to plant a new tree. It was a tree that had grown up in a spot where I didn't want it. And so I was going to move it to another spot. And I picked just the right place, and I had my shovel, and I was just getting ready to dig. And all of a sudden, what I now know is our landscape angel appeared to me. And she is, her name is Datas, and she's about 11 feet tall, and she appears in a kind of wispy, non-physical body. And she said immediately, no, and she just yelled it to me where I couldn't possibly not pay attention. And she said, not there. No, not there. And so I said, okay, where do you want me to put it? And so she gave me a vision of me when I'm great grandmother, and we were sitting in rocking chairs underneath this tree out in the field, and it was in a place that didn't look to me like it was a good place to plant it at all. Okay. And I said, really? And then that vision was just so powerful. The grandkids were playing all around us. Great grandkids were playing around us, and this tree was huge. And so I said, okay. And I moved the spot to the place, and we put it in. There was a fence that didn't fit with it, and it felt weird. We ended up moving that fence, taking it out. And now that it's gotten to some size, I see exactly why she needed us to put it there. It twins perfectly. It's a linden tree, and it twins with our other linden that's there that's about 400 years old.
Wow.
And this one is becoming a magnificent large tree to match it.
Mhm.
So our landscape angel has conferred with us several times since then. But she doesn't present herself very often, but we know her. And then we also meet with the other nature spirits that take care of the land and the plants and everything.
Yep. It's as though they have the 7 generations to our future
Yeah.
planning,
Yeah.
and aside
Yeah.
from our small,
They know
one generation
Yeah.
thoughts.
more
Like
than we do.
A
They
much
know
bigger spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I want to know if you've actually been out under that tree with your grandkids yet.
Well, grandkids are now in their 20s, so I'm waiting for the great grandkids.
That's right. That's the vision. All right.
But yeah, that's going to happen. I'm quite sure of
I
it.
know. It's so great. You have to send a picture when that happens. I love it. That's really good.
Well,
let's
I
just
have more I
keep
can
going.
tell about
Yeah.
the influence too, if you want me to add some.
Yeah, let's do that.
well,
Let's talk
I
more.
want to take a really quick moment and interject here that this is not going to be easy for a lot of people to hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to have that awareness because in general, when things are inexplicable to a certain, our certain population,
Yeah.
I don't want those people to feel judged. And I don't want people who do believe this to also feel like they're protecting something.
Yeah.
But I want this to be yet another way that we can understand that there are different ways of connecting around the death cycle. And what is the death cycle for you, and the impact that your mother's death had for you made it clear that you don't see this as an ending of her soul, but as just like a reanimating in a different sense, right? And so, I want us all to just very gently hold this beautiful conversation so that nobody feels kind of othered by their disbelief or anything.
Or their
But
belief.
I want to just, draw it to like, what is it about death and dying that gives us these gifts, right? Like when people share these things, some of us are ready to hear it. And your husband, it took him a long time to finally come to this realization, like this is not just something that's happening. This is actually something very real. And so, maybe speak about the challenges of having conversations like this, or like what would you like to impart to our listeners who may struggle with thinking they believe they hear a loved one from the other side, but don't want to be called nuts or wacky, right?
Right.
Well, thank goodness we're getting enough people who now are writing books about this. And that was another thing that happened when my mother was pushing books out, telling me, okay, this is your next book to read. The next theme that she decided to pursue with us was multiple lives.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And she said, we're eternal beings, we let go of our physical body. But she says that's why there's no reason to fear. There's nothing to fear, absolutely nothing to fear. But she says that we do keep on going. And she did, you can choose. You choose what you want to do. So you can stay on the other side. You don't have to come back in to be another physical entity on whatever planet you want to be on. You choose. You get to choose. You are a free soul to do anything you want to. She said that's where the churches that raised you said it's just one lifetime and that's it. And so you've got to be prepared for that. And she's just saying it's much more than that. It's much, much more than that. And so that led us into reading books on multiple lives. And there were a few authors at that time. This is 1997 when she died. A few authors that were coming out with stories of, mainly psychotherapists who were doing hypnotic regressions and recognizing that their patients were talking about another person, another being, and it turned out to be past lives or sometimes future lives.
Yep. Did you cross paths with Many Masters, Many Lives, that book?
Yes.
That was my very first book that I literally stumbled upon this book on some yard sale, and it just kind of kept drawing my attention to go back and pay the 10 cents. And that was that was kind of an affirmation of what I already
Brian
sensed.
Weiss, I think, is the author.
Yeah. It reminds me too what you were saying about the and what Annalisa was pointing to of people sometimes not being able to accept this. We had a guest talking about near-death experience, and when she first had that happen, it was quite a while ago, 20, 30 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And she said that she was working in a psych hospital at the time, and so she didn't want to tell anybody because she felt like, they're going to put me in the hospital and tell me I'm schizophrenic, So she didn't tell anybody about it for a long time.
It took her 20 years to finally come out and say something.
Yeah, but the same thing, we start seeing more and more scientific evidence and more people writing about it. And then she felt like she could finally tell her story, and it was such a relief.
Yeah. And then once you tell your story, then there are lots of people who it helps them to tell their story too.
Exactly.
And everybody has a story.
Yeah.
It's just finding the way of feeling comfortable that it's okay and you will still be loved.
Yes, exactly.
And I also want to share that, you actually have a direct kind of, it sounds like it's an English language communication, like you hear words. And I want to also open it up that sometimes people feel things, sometimes people dream things, some people have the sensation. Like it's all different. We're not, there's not just one way to have
exactly
a way to communicate, right? Like there's many technologies out there and in us.
Loads of ways to communicate.
Yeah, you talked about some more of those. You talked about dreams and stuff in your diary you sent me. You want to tell them a little bit more about other ways that your loved ones have reached out to each other?
Shall I talk about my daughter?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
The stories about my mom and my dad are similar, but my mom, remained our family guide for all this time. She, by the way, has come back in another body, and I know who she is. She's living not too far from us, but she also stays on the other side. So this is another interesting part of it. She says we leave a part of our soul with us on the other side. So we're, if you want to call it heaven or whatever that term you want to use for the spiritual realm. So we're both there and here.
Wow.
And both places at the same time.
Now we're talking quantum physics.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, wait.
Exactly.
Stop the show. What? I love it.
So we got all of, all this rich information from them, both in terms of what they have done in the between lives time, and then how they have also come back in to life here again too. And so it's like their souls are sponsoring two more people who live on Earth, but they're also on the other side communicating with us too. So it's really, really cool.
Fran, this also reminds me, there's a Korean science fiction writer who I read like 2 or 3 years ago, but he talked about, he has stories, like short stories that sound just like that. Like the old one was actually the baby that was coming through, like the people, and had all these almost like the nesting doll kind of idea. But, I feel like that's also information that's coming to us, even if it's titled fiction, right? These are dreams, these are stories that are kind of filtered out for the possibility of spending time thinking about and be like, that might actually be possible.
That could be true.
Yeah.
So our daughter, at age 56, was dying of cancer. And by the time that she was approaching death, and she was living with us, so we were all very much interconnected and assisting her with the transition. And so we knew that when she crossed over, that she would keep the connection, keep in touch. So as soon as she crossed over, and this was at the time of the pandemic, this was 2020, which was a horrible time for her because at the very end, we had a hard time being able to persuade the hospice center to let us be there physically because everybody was really freaking out about nobody was supposed to be anywhere except home.
Yeah.
It was a very awkward time. But anyway, she knew that. We prayed together every night. And so she crossed over peacefully. And then right away, within a very short time, it was clear to all of us that she was connecting to us by butterflies.
That's right. I remember that part. Yeah.
She made it really clear that's what she was going to do because she loved butterflies. And she had one special type of butterfly that she especially liked. She had married a Guatemalan man, and in Central America, they have this iridescent blue butterfly. And that's just absolutely gorgeous and supposed to have a lot of magical qualities and so forth. And she had put one up on her wall that she found in a metaphysical shop to try to heal. She was really, really working hard on trying to heal her body and was not successful. So butterflies it was. Boy, did she send the butterflies. We collected a journal, and she was, at first she was chatting with me when she crossed over quite a bit. She would, just say a little something, and then she'd be gone, and then she'd come back again. Usually when I was in the garden, if I was in the garden, there she was. She'd do teasing things like, Mom, I don't like the way you're weeding. I don't want you to pull out that plant, don't do that. And, she was trying very hard to do what my mom had done, which was to be able to influence the physical realm. And so she was practicing different things. And it was about 10 days after she left, I was out picking green beans, and I had picked one. We had a very prolific crop that year. And I had one section that I had done that was, this was a one on a climbing kind of place, like a vines. And so I decided I was going to pick this completely clean, which I did. And I come back the next morning, and I'm going to pick the next section, but I thought I'd just lift up a couple of leaves and see. It was just full of green beans right there, where I had completely emptied it the night before. Okay. And I said, Cathy, did you do that? And she said, yeah, I did. And she was really pleased with herself. So that's the kind of thing that she did at the beginning. She loved my sister's grandchildren. And she loved children. She was a teacher. She was a bilingual teacher. And she didn't get to be with those kids nearly as much as she wanted. They were her nieces and nephews or something, whatever the relationship is, cousins. But anyway, so she started visiting them every day. So the kids would be out playing, and here'd be these butterflies come, and my sister and her daughter would say, that's Cathy,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's Cathy, And so finally, one of her sons, who was 8 years old, he says, I am so done with this story. Cathy can't possibly fit inside that butterfly. And his 10-year-old brother said, it's okay. She can, because you can do anything you want to. When you're in the spiritual realm, you can do whatever you want to. And she can do that if she wants to. And she's in that, she's visiting us in the butterfly. And he said, oh, and he accepted the story. And so then from then on, it was, hey, look, there's Cathy. It was a great way for her to be remembered, by those kids
That's
doing
so
that
great.
butterfly thing.
Really, so sweet.
And then we had even like friends who one lived in North Carolina, another lived in another state, and they would say, I had this butterfly that we've never seen this species before. And, what is it?
Through.
That's Cathy's visit. Okay. That's great. So that was her means of.
That's so great. You and I had a bit of a conversation. I just want to reflect on this a little too about, did you ever feel like they were held against their will? Like we love to have them around. And I think you and I talked about this, did you feel like you're kind of keeping them from being able to just go by being so much in love with their visits and all that? And you talked about it a little bit. You want to tell me again what you said?
Yeah. Let's see. Definitely with Cathy, she had decided she had cancer that was pretty nasty. It was it had metastasized, so it was all over her body. And it was quite a challenge for her to even decide that she wanted to try to stay. But her son she felt too young for her to leave yet, early 20s. She said, I just got to stay for his sake. And so she chose. Up until that time, she'd only done homeopathics and herbal remedies for everything medical. And she just refused to have anything to do with the allopathic medical system. And so then when she made a decision of the cancer, just all of a sudden she was told, this is what you have. And she she hadn't been willing to accept it until then. So then she accepted it and she said, okay, I'm going to go with the chemo thing. I'm going to do it. And so she stayed for 2 more years doing chemo, but it was really tough on her body.
Yeah.
It was just so painful to go through that with her as her mom and me and just all of the pain that she went through those 2 years. And I really wish that we had been able to have some counselor say, it's time, instead of dragging that on for her. It was just so painful. It really was.
Fran, could I ask you about that though? I heard you say that she wanted to try to live longer for her son.
Yes.
And so she was looking for quantity of days, right? And not necessarily quality, because she was trying to keep it in this form, in this plane with her son.
Yes.
So that was a value that she had though, right?
Yes. And she chose that. So
yes.
that's fine. It really was fine. It was tough, but it was a hard
Yeah,
thing
that's a hard
for her
road.
to do. But it was beautiful. It was very loving. And she does stay in touch now with my other daughter, who's the one who kind of shepherds this son because he doesn't have any parents now. And so we all help him, but he's on his own now. He's doing
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's a good family there.
Yeah.
But just back to that thought about, because you and I did talk about this, the being in touch and loving the connection with people. Sometimes you're not letting them go on and do what they need to do on the other side, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit. So
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
yeah.
They say that it doesn't, as long as it's not a connection that's a desperate kind of connection, that it's just where they're having fun and then they go and do other things. So Cathy does, what she's doing now is she was a dancer and she just loved life. She was just full of did all kinds of things. And so she's doing that on the other side, which includes visiting other universes. So when she left this universe, she didn't check in with us for months. She was somewhere way off in another dimension of some kind. And she was just having fun, exploring, because she loves to travel. So she was exploring the spiritual realm and just seeing what were all the different things. She does assure us, as have both of my parents, that there's plenty of life beyond Earth, by the way, in our universe.
Oh yeah.
That it's rich and full, and there's loads of stuff to explore.
So they're really kind of letting you know that this is their choice to be visiting, and you said, I think you told me that your grandma or that your mom also kind of went away for a while, and you said, and you felt like she was released, or she was not so much that she was released, but that you're not holding tight to that you're allowing. You all your family are enjoying that connection, and she's enjoying it, and your other family members, but there's no like, we're hanging on to you, can't leave. It's like they come and go with love and agency. Yeah.
And it did change the grief process quite a bit. I mean, we still did lots of grieving, but it was joyful grieving. It was, it felt good. It didn't feel sad at all.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
I did
That's
most
a
of my
beautiful part of
grieving
that.
with Cathy during the period where she was from the time that the cancer was diagnosed until her death. And by the time that she had crossed over, we were celebrating together instead of, I didn't have many tears left.
Yeah.
And all my grieving early.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing that, we can also offer to listeners. Like, there are some family members that you're welcome to bid adieu, because this is a relationship between, people and spirits or whatnot. But it's okay when it's like, I need my space.
Yes.
And that also kind of protects oneself from the exhaustion of listening.
Yes.
Like, it's okay. Like, there's no one way to do it, but whatever you're sensing for yourself is 100% appropriate for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's really a beautiful point to make for everybody, is that this is not done one way or another. And no matter what your experience is, it's valid and beautiful, and say thank you.
Precious
Gratitude.
and
Yeah,
yes,
precious. Exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah, this has been really fun. We are kind of getting toward the end of the time, but I wanted to just double check. Is there anything else? Well, Annalisa, is there anything else you'd like to ask? And then we always end with the question: is there anything that we didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about too? So, Annalisa, did you have any other questions
Yeah,
that you
just
wanted?
'cause my favorite question is what frightens you about the end of life? That's like, like what is it that you and some people have no fears around end of life, so that's also a 100% available. But
Yeah,
what is it?
I like that question. And that's one of the things that my mom taught me. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't fear the end of life at all. I feel like I'm going to miss my family, and so that sense of leaving them and what's going to come next. But one of the things that's happened is that both Wayne and I get a lot of lucid dreams about our future life. And we've got quite a plan for what we're going to do next.
Good. Beautiful.
Next
So
to the one that we have now. And so I don't feel bad even about leaving my husband because I know we're gonna meet again and we're
there's
gonna
a
do
soul
more fun
contract.
stuff. So
Yep, I love it. Beautiful.
it's just, and it's all so much fun, it's so it's just full of excitement and joy and wonder and beauty and
Yes,
Yeah.
Fran, so
my
you and I
goodness.
are literally on the same page because I've said this for over a decade. I'm like, I'm excited. I am so
Yeah.
excited for the other side. Like, it's another adventure. I am
Yeah.
so ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the other thing I could add to this one is I mentioned in the bio statement is the 2 books that I've written fairly recently. They're spiritual books. And that again happened. It sort of happened to me because of the telepathic communication that I learned with my mom. We grew up in our grandfather was a minister and a lot of connections with different types of churches. And I, my first husband was a minister. And so I was in the church serving as an assistant minister for 7 years and, we've had all these different experiences. And then, so I had learned a lot about prayer, but I'd never been very good at it. And I realized as I've gotten older that one of the reasons is that my first husband had prayers that were way too long, and as did Grandpa. And they all were prayers that were guiding God to do what he, the prayer giver, the prayer speaker, wanted to happen. In other words, it wasn't
They were
exactly.
petitions.
Yeah. And I didn't like that. And so I ended up not praying in very, other than kind of moments and more like visions and things, but not in words. And I don't think prayers have to be in words anyway. But I do like the idea of connecting with the spiritual realm by prayer or by meditation. And so in meditation, I was on a vacation and I'm floating in a pool of water. And all of a sudden I get this message from God saying, Ginger, we need to write a book. And I said, what? I'm busy. I don't have time to do, I have other books I have to write. Not, and said, no, it's just, I need you to do this. So I said, okay. And I started taking down the messages that I was getting. And it was pretty substantial. And so I ended up actually publishing that. And then towards the end of that, I was I do these things where I go out of body. And I had taken my 2 daughters to a place that I like in Bermuda where I wanted them to get healed. And we were in the water and we were having a healing ceremony. And all of a sudden, Jesus appeared. And it was the Jesus that I knew kind of from my childhood days growing up. He was dressed like that. And he said, I need you to meet me back here tomorrow and we're going to talk. And then the word was, I want to put a few of my messages in the book that you're writing for God. I said, okay. And so then I started taking the messages from Jesus and they were quite different. And so we connected telepathically and I wrote them down and I said, this is getting to be an awful lot to put into one book. And I said, do you want your own book? And he said, yeah, please. And so,
That's great.
so this whole process has just led to this unfolding of telepathic communications with most anybody you want to connect with.
Mhm.
And it's just fun. It's
Yeah.
really, really fun.
I love it.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading those books and also putting them up for the audience to be
It's
able to
kind of
check it
wild,
out.
but yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It's all good.
it's all good. Yeah, great. And as always, we like to end our podcasts with a poem. And Fran has offered to share with us a beautiful poem that she sent to me earlier. So, Fran, why don't you tell us a little bit about where this came from, and then go ahead and read it for us.
Okay. Well, this is written by Jesus. And when I connected with him to write a second spiritual book, I asked him to talk about healing. And this was the poem that he gave me on healing.
Beautiful.
So this is what he said. Healing is knowing your eternal connectedness with all that is. Healing is feeling the love that surrounds you. Healing is releasing fear. Healing is trusting that you are regenerating every cell of your body. Healing is knowing the truth. Healing is understanding that you chose your life. Healing is knowing how powerful you are.
Oh, wow, beautiful. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jesus. And thank you, Fran.
Yeah,
Really appreciate you. It's been so
yes,
great to have this conversation.
for this
I'm looking
important
forward to
ministry.
I'm looking forward to talking to you some more.
Yes.
Because I had a similar experience with my mom and dad. They both,
Oh,
you remember Jeannie died
yeah,
before Vern, and that was sort of the same
yeah,
idea.
yeah.
So we'll talk some more.
Way cool.
And Ana Luisa and you can call and talk to each other in Spanish. So
That's right. That's right. I love this.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Many
Thank you.
blessings.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks so much for joining us on the End of Life Conversations. We appreciate you and look forward to sharing our stories. We encourage you to subscribe to have access to premium episodes and extra resources. Links to our guests and their recommendations and a transcript of this episode will be in the podcast notes.
Yes, thank you so much. And please tell all your friends. Follow us on social media, and again, consider subscribing for some excellent premium content. We want to acknowledge that the music we are using was composed and produced by Charles Heastand. We also want to acknowledge that we live on unceded lands that have been cared for thousands of years by Indigenous peoples who are still here.